Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose.
How you doing this morning, Jared?
Man, I'm good, brother. I'm good. How are you doing?
Fantastic, man. One of those days. Feeling grateful, feeling ready, feeling alive, living on purpose, baby.
Yeah, I love it. This is the first time we've done 2 podcasts in one day. So
Maybe that's contributing to
it's
my
quite
really
adventurous.
great feeling.
Dude, what kind of life would it be if we literally just had like days where we recorded badass guest after badass guest?
Amazing. I mean, that's what it needs to be because I'm feeling pretty charged up right now.
This is the life right here. Keep me in quarantine forever if this is what I get to do.
No, don't say that.
You should see the look my studio audience just gave me for that. Andrea does not approve. Yeah, I'm good, man. Hey, what did you think of Craig's story?
Dude, I mean, goosebump central, man. I probably got goosebumps like 7 different times listening to him. I mean, 100-foot drop, landing on your feet, shattering everything. I mean, oh my God. And then I think what got me the most is his ownership of that. Like, he doesn't even, not the slightest cringe or doubt or fear or regret talking about the situation. He just completely owns his life, man. And you can see that with the way how he explains it to us and how he went that. So I loved it. I would say that my biggest takeaways from that were to take full responsibility of your ownership. You know, he talked about the quote that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And he is living that example. And then just really adapting. You know, I like how he likes to use the word adapt instead of overcome. But yeah, I loved it, man. What'd you think?
I thought the same thing. That quote for sure stuck with me, and I loved. He was. I think his story fits his personality, where he talked about he was attracted to rock climbing because it's literally like physically putting a puzzle together, where you reach, where you step. And that's all about adaptation, because you don't just overcome a cliff. You don't just run through it and get to the top. You have to adapt to this finger hold or that foothold. And so not only say, is he attracted to a sport that is all about adaptation, but then he applied it to his life. And it made a lot of sense to me, because I think for a ton of my life, I just try to overcome stuff. And you know, like Andrea laughs at me all the time because I always break things around the house, right? If something doesn't fit, instead of thinking about how it should fit, I just try to force it in there, right? Like I just overcome it. And he was all about adapting. It just really made me think like how much, one, more efficient that is for you, and two, that's truly more of the message and people should get, is not necessarily worried about overcoming something, just adapting to that situation, and you're going to find your way through it and you're going to learn about it.
Love it, man. Yeah, he was pretty powerful. I'm excited for for this next episode though as well.
My goodness, man. Anybody that has badassery in their title has my attention.
Yeah, and a face tat.
And a face tattoo. Yeah, it'll be a good one. I hope the On Purpose community is ready for this one.
Yep. All right, well, let's bring her on. All right, On Purpose family, I am very excited for our guest today, Miss Shelly Davies, who's tuning in all the way from Hamilton, New Zealand. She has a master's degree in creative writing, which in her words, she got about 300 years ago, which I think is a lie, because for 300 years old, she looks phenomenal. She has ShellyDavies.com. She's been an entrepreneur and running her business for 8 years and specializes in writing, joy, and badassery. She's also an ex-wife, a widow, a partner, and a grandmother, and says she loves family, but it can be hard as well. And obviously a face tattoo rocker as well. So we have a lot to dig into. Guys, please help me welcome Shelly Davies. How you doing today, Shelly?
Hey, kia ora from New Zealand. It's so good to be here. Oh my gosh, I don't know where we're going to start. Have we got like 3 hours? Because there's so much to talk about.
We don't have that much time, but we can definitely start with a couple warm-up questions to get you warmed up. You know, easy to
Yeah.
And then we can really get deep because I'm dying to ask you a bunch of questions. I'm sure Jared is too.
Yeah.
So Jared, why don't you get us kicked off with the warm up, my man?
Yeah, well, we're big into fitness and fighting and living this whole lifestyle, right, which encompasses all of that. So we got to warm up. We just don't jump into the deep end and go right away. So Shelly, first off, thank you for making us international.
Woohoo! So
International,
glad.
and you're our first female guest.
Yes, I am.
So
I'm
we're-
so proud to bring some estrogen to the room. Yeah,
What-
boys.
Yeah, no, it's good. We've had that request for quite a while, so it's awesome to have you as the in the history of the On Purpose podcast. You'll always be the first lady to bring it for us. So, all right, I need to know. You're stranded wherever you're at. Like we're in this situation now where you can't leave and go do anything. You get one food for the rest of your life. What are you taking with you?
I've been thinking about this question for days, and I was really hoping you weren't going to ask me this one.
No, we got to.
Okay. So my first response was KFC, but then I was like, really, seriously, Shelly, you eat KFC for like 2 meals, you're just going to be sick. So I decided that actually a really good chicken salad. Like a really good chicken salad. Now that might sound so boring, but you can do so much with it, right? So as long as there's some room to move around, like we can get a bit of variety in the chicken salad, I could eat that 3 times a day for the rest of my life. I would eat chicken salad for breakfast, no sweat.
Fried or grilled?
Oh, okay, fried.
Yeah, that's good though, because the rest of the greens balance out the saturated fat, and you can work it off. That's not a bad choice. But is
Grilled is good.
KFC is big in New Zealand?
I guess it's about as big as McDonald's. My whole life, like I was 15 in New Zealand. When you're 15, you do some kind of, well, you used to back in my day, do some important school exams and things in school. And I had friends who were getting given cars or cash payments as motivation from their parents to do well in these exams. And that when I just like kicked ass in all of my exams, my parents were like, "What are we going to do?" And I was like, "Let's have KFC for dinner." Yeah.
There you go.
That's hilarious.
All right,
So
well,
obviously you like fried chicken. We know
Yeah.
that. We know that about Shelly. I'm a fried chicken fan myself. So next
I have heard some of the discussion on wings, and I'm a wings and blue cheese girl, just for the record.
Oh, same
Oh,
here.
man.
Same here. Yeah, we can definitely touch on that too. Do you guys have Wingstop in New Zealand?
No.
No. Okay. Next time you visit your sister in Colorado, I'm gonna have to take you to Wingstop. Get you some Cajun.
Okay. It's a date. I'm supposed to be there in October, so we'll see if that goes ahead.
All right.
Yeah,
all
we
right.
love it.
Wing date for sure. All right, Shelly. Next warm-up question. If you could be any superhero, you can make it up yourself with any superpower. Who could it be? You can mix it up. It could be Batman with X-ray vision, whatever it is. What superhero would you be, and what would be your superpower?
Oh. Like an existing superhero, right? Because then I would just have to go like Wonder Woman, right? I would just have to like
You can make it up. You could be, Super Shelly, whatever you want.
a badass girl. I don't know. But I regardless of what I would be called, my superpower would be the ability to make people love themselves. That would be my superpower. Like if I could just go around and sprinkle some of that shit on everyone, everywhere I go, that is what I would want to do.
Love it. That's awesome.
That might be the best answer we've ever had.
See?
Maybe so. Maybe so. That's definitely the
podcast.
most selfless one.
Yeah.
I was going to say first podcast guest without balls, although I have got balls for the record. And the best superhero answer. So I'm winning.
Wait. You got to go a little bit deeper than that. You got balls. You're just saying you're real ballsy. You're not afraid to take risks, or what is it?
Yeah. Yes. Nothing. That was metaphorical. No, nothing hiding away in there. Yeah. Just I would like to think I'm pretty ballsy these days, and that was not the case my whole life. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, anyone with a face tat, I think it's pretty evident you got some balls for sure.
Do we need to talk about that first? Do we need to get the?
No, we got to finish warming up. Although you're going full speed.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Please,
you're
as
good. We just want. What book are you currently reading?
The Middle Finger Project by Ash Ambroget.
Really? Have you heard of that one, Ali?
I think I have heard of it. Haven't read it though.
Yeah, it's new. It's just been out for a little while. I think since just before Christmas or maybe early this year. I don't know. Time has lost all meaning right now. But her business, the Middle Finger Project, I've been a huge fan for many years, and she used to have a Facebook group, a paid Facebook group called the Unfuckwithable Girlfriends. And that group that still continues today, although not under her umbrella anymore, is the most wise and badass, resourceful, insightful group of mostly businesswomen with a couple of we'll let you in guys as long as you behave yourselves kind of thing. That is the most amazing group ever. So Ash Ambroget, if you want a badass brand, if you want to lean into authenticity in your business, she's someone to follow.
Very cool. Yeah, she sounds right up our alley.
All right. Well, you feeling warm, Shelly?
I'm warm. I'm good to go. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, since you're warmed up and you've been itching to just dig deep, let's just start off with a really deep question and see where it goes from there. So, Miss Shelly Davies, how would you describe what is your life's purpose?
So I currently know that my life's purpose is to be an example for other people, to show them how to love themselves. And for me, the process is that you need to know yourself. You need to know who you are, so that then you can love yourself, right? Because I don't think you can truly love yourself if you don't get some real insight into who you are, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And then once you love yourself, you can find that power in your world. And that was the point of connection for me with you guys, living a life that's on purpose, that's claiming power to make your life what you want to make of it. Right. And I know that lots of people have thoughts around power and control, and we maybe look at it with a negative lens. But for me, the ultimate joy is having power in my own world. And if I had a wish for everybody, it was that they would understand that the power is within them. That's one of the things that people are discovering in this pandemic and being locked down and everything. I can't control what's going on around me, but I can control what's going on in me. And that's where the power lies.
And how did you come across that? Was there a specific moment or an event or a series of events that led you to the question, what am I really doing here?
I would say a series of events. I remember knowing when I was 15 that my special gift on earth was to love people. And even as I say that out loud, it sounds so woo and I don't know, I wouldn't call myself an earth mother or anything. I'm not, I don't know, I'm in touch with my spirituality. And as an Indigenous person, I talk a lot about things that are intangible and spiritual. But I knew back then that was my special gift, that I could love till the end of the earth, And it was only last year that I had a period of quite deep depression for a couple of months that I couldn't shake. Now, depression's been part of my journey for many years, right? It's barely even newsworthy. It's just such a common thing. Sure. And it rears its head every now and then, and I go, oh, yeah, I know you. Okay, so you're back. What are we going to do together this time? Okay, cool. Let's work through this. Right, moving on. And that's fine. That doesn't worry me. But I had this period for a couple of months that I just couldn't shake. And it was pissing me off because I couldn't shake it. All my usual resources were not working. And eventually I just had a bit of a breakthrough with a therapist, because I think that smart people always have someone to talk to, right? Whether it's an official person or just someone who helps you have those deep conversations. And had a breakthrough and realized that I just wasn't acknowledging that there was more that I needed to step up and do now. So I really had to acknowledge that purpose was to take it to the next level. Yep, you're good at loving people, Shelly, Now it's time to help other people love themselves.
That's amazing. Can you tell us, Shelly, exactly for me and for our listeners, just to make sure I'm clear, what exactly do you mean by an indigenous person?
Yeah, so in New Zealand, the native people here, the First Nations here are the Māori of New Zealand, and my ancestors are Māori. And so my face tattoo is called a tā moko, or a moko kauai. Moko is what we call our indigenous tattoos here, and moko kauai means on your chin or on your jaw. And so this is a traditional practice for Māori women from pre-colonial times that's really going through a resurgence at the moment, and it's about stepping into your identity. It's about your what we call whakapapa, which means your ancestry, your genealogy, your family history. So it's a statement of my identity as a Māori woman.
How long have you had it?
2 years now, just 2 years this month. And it's a fucking scary thing to do, can I tell you? Just put something on your face that changes the way the world views you is it's very vulnerable at first. It's very empowering once you step into it. But for me, a big part of it, because you would usually think of Māori people as having brown skin, and I'm very, very fair, right? And so part of it for me was I was sick of explaining to people who I am and where I come from. I wanted to wear what I feel on the inside, on the outside. And I also wanted to reject a little bit of the white privilege that, as someone with pale skin, I am a recipient of in my life. So I don't know if that's the kind of thing that you guys have ever investigated or thought about, but that was part of my journey, is going, I'm gonna reject that to a certain point.
That's awesome. And over there in New Zealand, I recently saw this viral video of this child who was an indigenous little boy with dwarfism, I believe. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, it's not ringing a bell yet.
So it went viral, and apparently he was getting bullied, and then there was all this backlash that the video that went viral was fake, of his mother filming him and him crying in the car. But that kind of was a recent highlight of indigenous people. In your experience, do indigenous people in New Zealand, are they discriminated against? Is it kind of this if you're indigenous, is there some sort of preconceived stereotype among the masses towards indigenous people?
For me, it's probably more of a discussion of people of color, which I'm sure that you would have some statements about, and given your
For sure.
And so I think that in the world, in Western society, we've got a long way to go when it comes to equality, diversity, inclusion, figuring our shit out around those things. So for me, rather than just a conversation about being Indigenous, it's more about our unconscious biases. Jared, I'm sure in the police you've had plenty of experiences and times thinking about those kinds of things. I am a fierce defendant of Indigenous rights, and I think that a lot of the world's problems can be solved if we give our Indigenous people the voice that they once had. If rather, let me say that again, say it better, if we as Indigenous people reclaim our voice, right? So we don't actually need anyone to give it to us, it's ours. And those are some battles for us that we will continue having for a long time, I think.
Gotcha. And yeah, thanks for the clarification on that. And I think you're absolutely right. We have a long way to go, but it's very important not to forget that we've also come a very, very long way. No matter what we see in the media, that we have come a very long way, and there is so much positivity and love in the world already. That's a great thing to highlight. So, so Shelly, I'm curious to know, you've had this for 2 years now, and you have already described yourself in our short time together as a fierce woman, and you definitely have that aura from just your image, right? Shorter hair, tattoo on the face. I see in the background, it looks almost like this Amazoness woman skirt or something like that. However, at the same time, you feel that you know that your purpose is to show people how to love themselves. So how do you overcome this fierce image that for some upon first interaction may repel people away from you, right? I had this recent experience. I used to have a pretty fierce mustache, and I've kind of seen how an image of your exterior image, people will judge, people will make stereotypes. It's just human nature. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to make an assumption when we first see someone. So how do you adapt and move around that in order to fulfill your purpose with such a fierce outer image?
Mm. Let me think. So I'm really big on bringing my whole self into any space that I come into, right? What you see is what you get. You get all of me. You get the fierce me. You get someone who will just hug you to death. And man, people have been talking about maybe we won't be huggers and handshakers after this pandemic. I'm like, no, that's not a thing. Like, no, I can't stop hugging people. What am I trying to say? The first impression, people will have the first impression that they're going to have. And I don't think there's much I can do about that. But by being my whole self, the self that you're experiencing now, the self that just doesn't have much of a filter and says all kind of random shit, just that it just comes out of her mouth. The self that is not afraid to be vulnerable and be wholly me, regardless of what someone might think, that breaks down barriers pretty fast. And so as long as someone is willing to engage, as long as someone is willing to hang out long enough to hear a few words that come out of my mouth, I think it becomes pretty clear that there is more to me than perhaps a fierce exterior.
Yeah, that's good. And what I love about what you've talked about so far, Shelly, is that everything you're doing is to, at least my view is, it's to open doors of communications, not necessarily for you, but for people that you feel strongly about, right? Like the tattoo opens up doors to converse about indigenous people. Obviously, if we're engaging with you, we can talk about women's rights, and you could be a powerful, strong woman, also helping for the indigenous people, your family, your community. So I love the selflessness in what you're doing, right? I haven't heard anything where this is designed to promote you as a person, but more it opens doors and platforms for you to step into and say, hey, I'm bigger than this, and here's who's coming with me, which I think is a big part of our community, right? Right now, there's 3 of us talking. It's everybody's isolated around the world, but there's really a whole community behind us. So how did you come to the point where you knew you wanted to love people, and that was your gift, but how did you know that you kind of had to be different in order to allow other people to step into their love? Was there a moment or were you in a position? Because like for me, I remember like being certain places and being like, I can't be average. I can't do what everybody else is doing because it doesn't allow me to be who I'm supposed to be. But I struggled with, okay, what is that step? Where do I step out and be comfortable yet still fulfill who I'm supposed to be? Was there a moment for you like that?
So I guess, the moment that I referred to after the period of depression last year was where I really had to acknowledge, because as you say, I'm not all about look at me, although I kind of am, because I really like attention. Let me be really clear. I like an audience, right? I'm a trainer. I go into people's businesses and I'll facilitate 2 days of training. And that is the hugest buzz for me, being able to work that room and keep people engaged and just give and give and give in a way that's of value to them. It's a huge buzz. So it's a little bit about me, but the moment where I acknowledged, holy fuck, I have to live a bigger life, was terrifying to me, because if I want to influence people, then I do have to have a big enough platform, which means I do have to be known to a certain extent. And that's where the conflict or the tension came in, because I don't want to be famous. I don't have some desire for that. But if you want to get your message out there, you have to have a platform, right? So just like you guys are building your community because you want to influence more and more and more people for good, for me, saying out loud that that's what I wanted to do, that I needed to be known more so that I could get my message out there, that felt like the next level of vulnerability. Now, if I go back a bit, so I'm 46 now, loving it. And I know I said master's degree 300 years ago because it feels that way. It feels like
I knew you were lying.
Don't let the flawless fool you. It feels like lifetimes ago. I feel like I've lived whole lives between then and now, because when I was doing that degree, I was married. I was very religious. I was having my first child. By the time my son was a year old, his dad left me. Within 2 months, his dad had drowned. So that's why I say widow and ex-wife, because it all kind of happened at the same time. I was living in the States. I got my master's degree in Utah. Then I was a single mom, and then I remarried, and that was an abusive marriage. And I mean, emotionally abusive, like a shitty marriage, let's just put it that way. And then years of being on my own as a single mom with 3 kids. And so that's why I'm like 300 years ago, because life throws so much at you, right? But if I go back 8 years from now, so at the age of 38, I made a really big, the biggest, boldest step in my life, which was to leave the religion that I had been raised in. Now, I tend not to talk about which religion, because that's not the point. The point is that I was raised with a belief system that was a very, very beautiful belief system, loving people, thinking that people are of huge worth and that we have divinity in us. And there were some restrictions in that way of life. And at 38, for the first time in my life, at 38, I was like, I'm not sure about these anymore. And because my entire family are still very active in that religion, for me to step out of it broke their hearts, It was huge and it was painful. And don't get me wrong, they are still all in my life, and they're wonderful, and they're amazing people, and there was no rejection or getting cut off or anything like that. But they feared for my soul. You can't hold that against people, right? If they just genuinely fear for you.
Right.
But the last 8 years has been this journey of exploration and spreading my wings, and on a daily basis, stepping more and more and more into who I am. And that has meant on a daily basis, recognizing a fear or a what if or a, oh, but I can't, or an, oh, but I shouldn't, and pushing through it. And that's been the journey.
And that was going to be my next question for you, because we have a lot of female listeners. We have a lot of listeners that are, they know there's something more they should be doing in life, but maybe they haven't taken that first step yet. Maybe they're still working towards it. What would you say for them as that first step? Like, what would you recommend they do to really get moving towards that purpose?
I would ask them, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about things that you wish you could do but you can't? And whatever that first thing is that comes to mind. So maybe I'll ask you guys, Jared and Ali, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? And maybe it won't work for you, because maybe you're already living life with so much purpose. But
there's always more out there.
Is there a thing that comes to your mind if I said, what would you like to do but you think you can't?
That's a great question. And for me, I know that a lot of the answers right now, because I'm continuously working on myself, are coming from the ego. And they're silly answers that are non-fulfilling. So, quite frankly, the first answer that came to my head was to essentially have no ties in a marriage, right? Be able to sleep with as many women as I wanted to, but that's not the framework, right? And that's not really actually what I want. But that's kind of the ego thing that puts the idea forward.
Yeah,
but I understand what you mean.
Yeah, I would that I can't do right now is I would just travel a whole lot more. And like we're moving towards that, but I have obligations here, right? And if I just upped and traveled, then my kids' lives are a little impacted and stuff.
Yeah.
I completely understand what you're saying, though, Shelly, about It's so tough when you know that your family, especially when it comes to religion, truly is just concerned for you because they believe to their core that you being in this religion and following this religion is what's best for you. And I saw that with my brother coming out as a gay man, and my father literally saying, oh my gosh, like we have to cure him, we have to help him, right? This is the work of the devil, kind of thing. But my brother wanting to truly be who he is and find out more about who he is, to express himself that way, so I really liked how bringing this back to your purpose, how you said that in order for people to love themselves, that they need to know themselves. And for me, at least in my journey, I'm continuing. I feel that that's a continuous journey
Yeah.
of getting to know myself. So, what would you say for our listeners, for maybe some of those who don't really know themselves, or maybe who they are is just who they've been trying to be to satisfy, religion or parents or friends? How do people start to try and get to know themselves?
Yeah. So I kind of have two answers, and one kind of goes back to the question that I asked you guys. How do you, or you asked me how would I help maybe your female listeners to get a bit braver or step out of themselves or more into themselves, that kind of thing. So first of all, I would I think that a lot of women, so I think that you two guys are self-aware and you're on this amazing journey and you go there, right? You have the hard conversations with yourselves or with other people. So when I ask you that question, there's not a whole lot in your lives that you're holding back on, because you understand already that living life with purpose means you are aware of what you want to do and you make it happen,
Yeah.
or you figure out, you figure those things out. For women, especially in my experience, we have a lot of either conscious or subconscious things that are holding us back because of what would people think, what's expected of us, or just the things that we kind of think are okay or not okay for us as women. I mean, our whole lives we are raised to be nice, don't upset people, don't stir things up, don't make waves. And I'm not saying that's the experience of every woman, but I think that you would find that most women could relate to that at some level. It's part of being ladylike and not causing trouble and that kind of thing. So within us there are lots and lots of, oh, I can't do that. Like, I can't say motherfucker, which I said for the first time, literally the first time, with one of my daughters on the deck of my house on an island off New Zealand. And just kept saying it over and over and over again until I could get comfortable with it. Because for 38 years of my life, I had never sworn. Right. So, because I know
Wow.
I was such a good girl, I'm making up for it now.
Wow.
But us sitting on the deck going, motherfucker, like, until it didn't feel wrong anymore, because I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with words. It's just the meaning that we attribute to them. And so every time there was something in my life starting 8 years ago that I wished that I could do, but I didn't think that I could, I would call myself out on that. What if I could? So, but you first, so it comes back to the knowing yourself thing too, right? You first have to be aware that the thought is there. Oh, I wish I could. So for me, the first thing was a tattoo. There's one on my hand. What if I could? My whole life I wondered about getting a tattoo. What if I could? But in the church, and because I was a good girl and it was quite black and white, that was not a thing that you would do. And then so I had to really play it through. What would happen? Well, my parents would be upset. Yeah, and would they stop loving you? No, but they'd be really sad. Yep, they're big. They're adults. They can live with it. You're a 38-year-old fucking woman. If you want to get a tattoo, you're allowed to get a tattoo. And if I'm scared of that, then go and have a hard conversation with my parents, which is what I did when I didn't with this. With this, I was still in a time where I was just going to do things and then face up to them afterwards, have the hard conversations afterwards. But by the time I wanted to get my moko kowai, which my great-great-grandmother had, so it's in our ancestry, but she also is the first one that joined this religion 5 generations ago. And so we hadn't done it since then. And so to go to my parents and say, hey, I've made a decision to do this thing. And I think it's going to be really, I know it's going to really upset you. I know it's going to be really hard. So I'm here to talk about it. That was not the same as asking permission, because I claim the right and the power to make my own choices and to then accept the consequences. But I don't need someone else's permission to live my life. So,
Man, sister.
Yeah, that's good.
If I were to encourage other women, it would be acknowledge the things that you wish you could do, and then work through a process of what if I could, and just take baby steps, right? Just one thing at a time. What if I could get that, I don't know, eyebrow piercing? That nose piercing was one for me. Nose piercing was another thing that I'd always wanted and I didn't think that I could do. And honestly, one of my daughters, who at the time was about 11, didn't speak to me for 3 or 4 days after I got it done, because it was not the way that I had raised her, and I had moved into this exploration phase in my life. And how do we, that leads me to your next question, Ali, which was, how do we start to know ourselves? And I truly believe that one of the really big answers is therapy. And I know that not everyone's down with that. So maybe it's using some psychometric testing, personality profiles, the Gallup strengths, the DISC profile, the Myers-Briggs, all those things, none of which I think are perfect, but all of which I think help to give us insight into ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. So self-awareness tools and therapy is okay.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. That's what it's been for me. And I know that that's not the same journey for everybody. But that's what has worked for me.
Yeah. And I definitely. And I think it's important for us to realize that needs to be a continuous practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Shelly that I'm looking at today is not the same Shelly 5 years ago, according to what you're telling me. So you doing all this work to know who Shelly was 5 years ago, you're having to do all this work, continue to do all this work now for the new Shelly. And I think that goes for everyone. Also wanted to say for our listeners too, that, for you being our first female guest, which is amazing, that obviously this does apply and may be in some circumstances more relatable to women, but what you were saying is relatable to everyone, man, woman, trans, whatever. So I just want to make sure that our listeners realize that and don't just write what you're sharing off if they're not a woman.
Thank you, because I really do believe that. I think this is about people loving themselves and stepping into their power. And when I, over the years, as you do work on your brand and your business, I've thought a lot about my brand and who am I speaking to. And women are close to my heart, right? I really, because I know the experience of being a woman, then I want other women to feel as powerful in their world as I do. But it was a really interesting thing last year to kind of look at the demographics of who's following me and those kinds of things. And there is a solid subset of men. And when I tried to figure out who they were, all I can come down to is good men who want to be better men.
Yeah.
And that just does my heart so much good. I absolutely adore it. They're also, they happen to be men who have strong women in their lives. And so they're like, oh, fuck yeah, I better learn more about this.
How do I deal with this? How do I cope?
Yeah.
And I like that message, and I echo what Ali said. This is for everybody, but I do think it's nice for women when they see somebody that's like them doing it, right? I think that's kind of going back to your indigenous people. I think that's one of the things we got to work on is, indigenous or people of color or women, is when people see somebody that looks like them having success instead of looking to a stereotype all the time.
Yeah. Now, you guys have probably heard about Jacinda Ardern, who's our prime minister, and she gets a bit of news coverage because she's kind of a really loving badass in her own way. And do you know who she is? Have you seen her on the news and in the media at all or anything?
Yeah, just a little bit.
You should totally look her up, Ali. So Jacinda Ardern, she's our prime minister. She's young. When she's got a partner who she's not married to.
How do you spell her last name?
Ardern.
Got it.
When she was elected, she was pregnant, and we didn't know that. So she's had her first child out of wedlock. All goodness since she's been Prime Minister. We've had these mosque shootings last year in New Zealand, and she just led with so much love and compassion and empathy. And the way that she has led us through the current pandemic has just been incredible. Now, for me to be raising daughters who get to see female leaders like that. So what you said, Jared, about women being, or girls being able to see someone like me, someone that you can relate to, it's so important. And there is a children's book that's been published about Jacinda. And I'm like, wow, if I had little baby girls now, my youngest two are 16 and 17, my two girls, I would love to read them a bedtime storybook about a strong female leader. How cool is that? Not a princess, not some mythical character, not a fairy tale, but an actual woman who's leading a country in a really brave and courageous and loving and empathetic way. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I love that, especially for our parents out there, is you kind of get to pick and choose when they're little. So I know for me, when I was fighting, for my two daughters, I made sure we watched as many female fights, like women's MMA fights, as guys, so that they could look and be like, okay, what dad does isn't only for Trey. It's not only for the boys, but I can do this too if I chose. Because you want people seeing themselves in possibilities, not seeing themselves in limits.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think we default a lot of times, right? We default to what we're limited to, whether it's formal education, peer pressure, just trying to conform. With conformity comes limits. And unless somebody opens your eyes and say, hey, this is possible, you can do more. You can be 40. I was 42, I think, when I did my first fight. 42 doesn't mean you're retired from everything. Yeah. So while we may see it as a niche, or like, okay, only certain, guys might look at Jared this way, you never know who else is watching and sees a beacon of hope in you.
Yes.
Yeah. But like you said earlier, if we live quietly, if we keep the story to ourselves, then nobody ever knows.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I think a lot about gifts and generosity and contributions that we have to make, and what a gift it can be to put yourself out there for someone to see, even though that's a risk to you, even though that's vulnerable, even though that then opens you up to criticism, right? Because in today's world, you put yourself out there, you're gonna get some criticism, you're gonna get some trolls or whatever. What a gift. And so I think a lot about vulnerability as a gift. Yeah, making ourselves vulnerable as a gift to others. I think that's one of the most powerful things we can do.
Yeah, and I saw you're a follower of Brene Brown. She does amazing work on the whole vulnerability movement.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that appealed to me about you guys, as I scroll. So I can't even remember who. Someone in my circles, and I know a lot of chiropractors, and do you guys still have chiropractors as a sponsor of your podcast?
They did the workshop with us. Yep.
Yeah. And so maybe it was through chiropractic circles that I came to see one of your podcasts. Somebody just commented or whatever. And so then I scrolled through and I kept seeing your purpose and power and consequence and responsibilities and perfection and imperfection and all those things. And I was like, oh, these are my people. These are my people. And then I went to your bio and it just said, contact us if you want to come on the show. And I was like, oh, pick me. So I love that that's the world we live in, where you can access and see and recognize connections with strangers and feel those connections and build from there. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things that we have in our world today, is our ability, when we are brave enough to go, I see something in you, I like it, let's act on that. And me 8 years ago wouldn't have done that. Me 5 years ago maybe wouldn't have done that.
It's that simple, right? It's that simple. I love how you simplified that of, I see something in you, I like it, let's act on that. Right. That's huge, when sometimes it's even so hard for us just to simply acknowledge each other, right? To take it a step further of acknowledging that you see something in them that you like.
Yeah, and then
That's
the courage to do something about it, because I think lots and lots of us have this point where we go, oh, I wish that I could get to know that person better, but who am I to do that? Or
Yeah.
why would they
right.
know me? Or there's a barrier there that could be about worthiness or value or confidence, could be about a whole lot of things. But stepping past that, because for me it came when I left the church. I left pretty much my entire social network, and I had just met this beautiful man who is still in my life now. And I realized after about a year or so of us being together that he was it. He was like my only friend, real friend right then. And I was expecting him to meet all of my emotional needs. And that is not sustainable. That is not fair to put onto any single person, married or not. That's not the way I think that we are built. And so then I was like, fuck, I need to get some new friends. And how do you do that when you're 38, 39, 40? I just wasn't even like, what a weird thing to have to consider doing. And because in my work, I meet hundreds of people a year, I decided that when I met someone, I just made a really conscious decision. When I see those people and think that they're cool, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to ask them out for coffee. I'm going to ask them out for dinner. I'm going to stop worrying about if guys think I'm hitting on them, because I'll just fucking mention my partner as often as I can until they get the message, like whatever it is. And I now have this tribe of the most incredible people everywhere I go, because I gave myself permission to go, yeah, I'm going to act on it.
Is there
Beautiful. And
go ahead, Ollie.
I was just going to say that that's beautiful. And I think that comes from the work that you do. Is that courage comes from loving yourself enough to take the initiative to let someone know that you see something in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and was there a time recently where you stood and you're like, this is working for me. I'm becoming who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, there really was. The first kind of gig I did this year was emceeing a day, like an all-team, all-staff day for one of our local district councils. So, local government. And maybe you wouldn't think that would be some amazing inspirational space, but there were 350 people in the room, and I was given the privilege of being the MC for the day. But the way that I do MCing is not just fill the gaps between. It's like a facilitative approach. Let's set a bunch of foundations at the beginning of the day. Let's go deep right from the beginning. I'm going to put myself out there in ways that shock people so that they go, whoa, today's going to be something different. And then let me weave that throughout the entire day. And there was a point in the afternoon where I had the entire room singing a song in the Māori language, and most of them would not speak that language at all. And they were all on their feet and they're all singing, and I'm up on a stage, and I was like, holy fuck, this is it. This is that thing that I want to do. And that was not about, look at me. That was about, look at the privilege that I've been given to take these people on a journey and just get them to start thinking about these things. Just get them to start thinking that we can show up differently in the world than we do, maybe, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and I love it. That episode we did, and we talk about this all the time, our Circle of Five, you've taken a really proactive approach to looking and seeking out people that fulfill you and that you want to be around, that you want to learn from. And that just puts you in positions to be successful, right? We're not stuck anymore in society where we live in these neighborhoods and we can't see what's going on across the street or across the ocean. Like, we have access to it all, but it comes back to all the way to your beginning, when your beginning statements is that you wanted more and you were supposed to do more. And in order to give more love, you had to take more risk. Yeah. And you can't, and I think that's where people stumble, is they want to do more. They know they're capable of doing more, but they also don't want the risk associated with it. And it's a dual package.
Yeah, it is. So one of my most powerful tools that I use for myself is to ask, what's the worst that could happen?
There you go.
And it's something I picked up from a psychologist at some stage many years ago. What is the worst that could happen? So I want to do this thing. I'm scared of it. I'm worried about the what ifs. Okay, let's work through the what ifs. What is the worst that could happen? And I will play out all the scenarios. And then I'll ask myself, can I live with that? Can I live with that? Can I live with that? Or if that happens, what will I do about it? What choices will I have at that stage? And very, very rarely when I play out all the scenarios, do I come up with one that I can't handle or mitigate or live with in some way. And ultimately, the only time really when any of those scenarios is going to stop me from moving ahead is if it's going to cause me or someone else harm. And other than that's pretty much my baseline right there. Other than that, it's like, what's the worst that could happen? Oh, I could look stupid.
Right.
And
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we do that exercise, like you said, we find out it's not going to harm me or others. And we never have to think about that again. But for whatever reason, a lot of us seem to replay the worst case scenario. And in some cases it happens. But I love that you went there, because that's definitely a tool that I love using, is asking myself, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, that's the worst. I can live with that. Cool. Never need to think about that. And just expect and anticipate that the best is going to happen. Guess what? If it doesn't, I already thought about the worst that could happen, and I can live with that moving forward.
And I love that exercise, and it frames things for you, because to me, ultimately, the worst that can happen in anything is I don't try it.
Yeah.
Right. Very seldom is the worst thing that can happen worse than regret, because that's when I don't try something, that means I get the potential to regret things.
Yeah. And you just never know the regret, and they're just never knowing. They're like, I will never know if I could have done that thing.
Right.
I will never know what might have happened. I will never know where that might have led to.
And it starts with a simple step, a simple decision to decide to start moving towards it. And that's a great way to get started. That's awesome.
Can I ask, bodies, right? So as I thought about coming on the show, I was like, these guys are fighters and they're like buff and they're into fitness, and I'm not. I was like, but I tell you what, I am more confident in my body at 46 than I have been in my whole life. Now, body positivity and fitness and health has been a real journey for me. About 10 years ago, I had weight loss surgery. So that's another part of my journey, is that I had gastric bypass and lost 50 kilos. And that was a choice to take power and control in my world.
Yep.
That was something that I wanted my daughters at the time to see me. I wanted them to see a mother who would do brave and courageous things for her own benefit. And it also was going to help me be a better mother, because I would have more energy. I was just so heavy and tired all the time. But so weight has always been a really big thing for me. And I'm not a gym bunny or anything like that, but I really love feeling strong and using my body. And so figuring that stuff out has been an ongoing process, figuring out in what ways do I want to use my body so that I feel well and so that I feel strong. And it's an ongoing journey of learning. But this year, in my 47th year, aerial fitness, pole dancing, hoops, silks. And that was the one thing that I was the most pissed off about with the lockdown, was that I couldn't fucking go to my pole classes anymore. I was loving it. Now, I got to tell you, 46-year-old, kind of short, dumpy woman on a pole is not the sexiest thing on the planet, but it feels good. It feels good. And I'm in a room full of mostly other women. We have some guys that come too, which is awesome, who are all doing the same thing, which is just owning and loving their bodies and trying to let go of all that self-consciousness that we have and all of the judgment, other people's judgment that we take on and then internalize and then perpetuate, right? And so I'm never going to be amazing on the poles or the hoops or the silks, but am I going to feel powerful that I can do those things? And are my children going to see me being powerful? Fuck yes. And I love that.
That's beautiful.
So I guess I wanted to talk. I mean, it was a thing for me that you guys are all into fitness and everything. And then I was like, well, how do I even come into that zone and be part of that conversation? And then I talked myself through, no, you've taken a lot of power in your body, Shelly. And so that was, I had to get over that hurdle internally.
Well, we're glad you brought that up and that you approached that yourself, because we're definitely into fitness, but it also just symbolizes empowerment, right? Like, one of the truly only things I own in life is my own wellness, right? You know, I mean, like we're living in times right now where, at least in the States, we're not supposed to go certain places. We're supposed to stay home and all this lockdown. Well, I still get to control my body and I still get to move my body. And as long as I can move, I'm alive.
Yeah.
But if I
Yeah.
neglect movement, it's hard to be exceptional in other places. And I think Ali and I agree upon this, or maybe he doesn't, but I think it's hard to be really great in one area and completely neglectful in another. I think when you pay attention to yourself as a whole being, that includes like your mental, your spiritual, your physical. Now you're truly operating at your peak performance.
Yeah, no, I definitely echo that. I mean, you can see behind us, that's what our podcast is about, is mind, spirit, body. You know, that's truly living on purpose, because without the health, without the wellness aspect, and I'm sure you can attest to this, Shelly, I mean, you said it, you can't show up in your fullest capacity. You know, the healthier you are, the harder you're going to be able to love, the more energy you're going to be able to put out there. So health and fitness is extremely important, and it does not matter whether you get it on a pole, you get it on a hike, or you get it in the cage, as long as you're getting fitness and find what you truly enjoy. So I commend you for that, getting your aerial fitness on, because as long as you are breaking a sweat and, like Jared said, moving the body, that's extremely important. And I think, in my experience, it's the number one pillar. You know, you can't, without health, it's really difficult. It's possible, but it's really difficult to fulfill the other aspects of life. I mean, if you're extremely overweight, it's going to be tough to sit there and meditate and try the body, right? Or to go and travel. If you're a business person, it's going to be hard to get on those planes and be traveling. So the more energy you have, the more you can take care of your health and wellness, I think is going to be more effective in all wellness. So Shelly, I want to diverge, because like you said, we need like 3, maybe 6 hours with you to get into this. And I know that we're coming up on our time here. So I wanted to ask you, as you know, the word therapy can be really off-putting to some, and that was your biggest suggestion, kind of getting to know yourself better. And I completely agree. Really uncovering some truth. For me, what's been a really awesome exercise that I've been utilizing lately is conversing with myself in the mirror as a form of therapy, and separating myself into two, my higher God being, and then here my ego self, and checking in with, hey, how are you feeling right now? What's going on? Sometimes really casual, right? Like, how you doing today, man? How you doing? And then letting myself answers. That's one exercise that I try and promote to the community, because it's worked so well for me. I know for you, writing is a big thing, and I'm actually reading a book right now, just started it today, Writing Without Bullshit, because I find myself to be, have you read that one?
No, but I have to.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you know how it is. Because for me, it's always been this drudging task to write a journal. I always have it on my task list for the week, my accountability chart. And every time I do that, it's tough. I'm more of a vocalizer and a listener. I like audiobooks more than I like reading. I like speaking more than I like writing. So these conversations are a better way for me to journal. What are some other tools for some of our listeners who are like, therapy is not for me, or Ali, your mirror conversations, you're a crazy ass, like I don't want to do that. Tell us a little bit more about your work on how some other tools that people get to know themselves, because I want all of our listeners to be able to be like, ooh, I like that one. I can use this one to try and get to know myself better.
Oh, it's a tricky one, because I definitely don't think I have all the answers, right? I know what worked for me, and different things work for different people. I guess I have this position where I believe that every human being has within us all of the resources to live a full and well and happy life. But I don't necessarily think that we can access them alone. I think that we sometimes need some external prompts to help us. And so for me, that external prompt is a psychologist or a counselor or a someone who can ask me questions, or can challenge my thinking, or can push me to think in a different way, or who can reflect back to me, here's what I'm hearing. What I hear from you, Ali, is that listening to podcasts, having conversations, those are the things that can help you tap into what's going on inside, because you get some external prompts there. I think that for lots of people, there's meditation and gratitude and journaling and all those kinds of things. But I don't know if there's any real rocket science, right? I think that everyone has to find some practices that will help them to tap into those internal resources that we have. For me, I know that sometimes I can't tap into all of them without someone else's help.
I love that. No, I completely agree. And I think that's what we're all about, community, your circle of five, the people around you. And for many, that may be a counselor. You've inspired me to reconsider that, because I've talked to a therapist before, but I haven't had a therapist in a long time.
You have to
So
find the right one, though. It really is like dating, right? It really, really is. I spent years and years seeing counselors, and it wasn't until I first saw a psychologist that worked for me, because I tend to be quite cerebral, I intellectualize things. And so cognitive behavioral therapy works really well for me, the ability to think and talk myself through things. But that's not the right approach for everybody at all. And so someone else might need some narrative therapy. Someone else, there are so many different approaches.
Yep.
And last year, the real huge insight I had was through something called, I want to say internal family systems. And it's like the conversations that you have with yourself in the mirror, Ali. It was about talking to different parts of myself. And so at that stage in my depression, I had this fear and anxiety. And anxiety's never been my thing. Like, I'm a depression girl. That's my jam. I don't do anxiety. And so when I experience it, it freaks me out. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, and I go away. And I had to have a conversation with the fear and anxiety that was sitting right here, and I had to have a conversation with it. I had to build a relationship with it. And so now I check in with it and go, hey, fear and anxiety, I know you're there. I know you're there to look after me. How you doing? Just want you to know that I'm listening, because
I love that.
And that's been huge. That was the thing that just pulled me up out of the dark spot that I was at. So I don't know if I gave a useful answer to that question.
Yeah, no, I think that there's you gave a variety of tools. What's really worked for you is therapy. I guess kind of what I was wondering more is what kind of happens if someone goes to shellydavies.com and wants to work with you. Kind of what do you recommend for people? Is it all custom tailored to what they tell you, or?
Yeah, look, really, if you go to my website, what you'll see mostly is about writing training, and
Okay.
I've just overlaid more of the whole part of me. So it's writing training delivered with joy and badassery, and all that really is in there about self-empowerment and having power in our world is some merchandise, some fun, sweary, badassery stuff that we can just. It's about fun, and it's about a reminder of those messages. So you can buy something for your friends and to be like, hey, don't forget to, I've got a gratitude journal that's full of the F word. And,
Love gratitude.
We've got a coffee cup that says, first we coffee, then we badass, that kind of stuff. So I'm early on this journey. Do I have something that I want to sell people to help them be more powerful in the world? No. Am I heading in that direction? Maybe. I'm rolling with it. We're seeing what comes. What I want to do more is this, having conversations, getting my voice out there. I definitely do keynotes. That's my absolute most joyful space, is having a room full of hundreds of people to engage with and try and get them thinking differently. But I just want to say about the writing, because it might seem that those are two disconnected things. I work in plain language. That's my expertise, the ability to explain things clearly and simply, which from research we know is what text should be. To get to a wide audience, everything that's written should be in everyday conversational language. We don't need high-level academic language or highly technical language to explain concepts. The best way to explain them is simply. 8 years of training people to do that has helped me to realize that what I'm encouraging them to do is to use their authentic voice. That is the most effective communication, whether it's business communication, email communication, technical communication. Using your authentic voice is almost always going to connect better than the formal business voice or any of those kinds of things. So that journey has helped me to become more me, to become more courageous, to strip back the fluff that we hide behind in our writing, people say to me, oh, but I want to convince this board that they should spend X amount of dollars to get these benefits. How do I say that? And I go, maybe we should just say, we need to spend X amount of dollars to get these benefits. Like, we don't actually have to package that up differently.
Right.
Say what you want to say. And so that is part of this discussion, and writing and getting comfortable with our voice can help us to get more confident and do some of that internal exploration as well.
Yeah, that's true. And it all goes back to what we talked about earlier, is you got to know yourself, right?
Yeah.
Before I can do a good keynote, before I can become a better parent, before I can really excel in anything, I have to be figuring out who I am.
Yeah.
And what do I want more of? And I love, like, all of what you're talking about is self-awareness, right? Like, I'm self-aware, I'm a deficient here. Well, for Ali, the mirror exercises work. You like to speak to somebody else. We all have different avenues, and you may try 3, like you said, you went to a bunch of different people before one stuck. But the key is to fight this temptation to think that where you are is where you'll always be. Right? If you want more, be continuing self-assessing, looking at, okay, what do I need more of in my life? What do I need less of in my life? How do I put this together? Because that's how all this evolves, right? Like, we're not supposed to just be who we were at 21 as who you are the rest of your life. That would be sad, but I think a lot of people buy into that.
Yeah, I think so too. And so I would like to invite your community to just sign up to my, I don't know if it says newsletter or weekly email or something. That's it. If each week I put out some random thoughts, it might be about how to write a pushback email, how to write a saying no email, or it might be about how to bend with the wind, because that's what we need to do in order to face the challenges in the world. It might be about my 16-year-old daughter riding a motorbike, going out on her first motorbike ride with no one here to watch and make sure she was okay, and me helping her plan through the what ifs. What if you drop your bike? What are you going to do? Those kinds of things. So each week, it's just some random Shelley thoughts, which could be writing, joy, or badassery. And I would love to be able to share that more widely.
Love it, Shelly. Yeah, it's crazy how things are aligned. Like I said, I just started writing without bullshit today. And actually, a couple hours, I read about 10 pages right before hopping on here. And that's exactly what it's about, is writing in your authentic voice. So I love when the universe just conspires and aligns things for you like that. So that's amazing. So Shelly, yeah, can you let our community know where they can sign up for your newsletter, where they can find you, social media tags, all that?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. It's either shellydavies.com or shellydavies.com, depending where you are. And if you just go to my website, shellydavies.com, make sure it's Shelly without an EY, so it's just SHELLY. And any page, you should be able to find the sign up for the newsletter. And I would just love to be able to keep sending some joy and badassery out to you.
Badass.
Yeah, we'll make sure we share that. We'll put the links into the YouTube video. And Shelly, it was an honor to have you as our first international guest.
Estrogen.
Estrogen. You were already international, though, because I was already watching over here, right? There have got to be people around the world.
But my
watching.
guest, you're the first international guest.
Love it.
Yeah, we love you as well, and we're proud of you, my friend. You keep up the good fight, and if anything our community can do to assist you, you do not hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege.
We're honored.
Thank you.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.